You presided over hundreds of mediations in your most recent career. There was one I was intrigued to read about where it was one of the rare ones where things didn't go to plan somewhat, and I believe it concerned a couple in northern New South Wales who were disputing, I think, something to do with property. And I believe the husband had come along with what you'd been recommending, but then his wife ordered him not to go ahead. And I believe that had something to do, in fact, with them coming from a different culture. That was one that didn't work well for you.
Yes. It was a very exceptional type sort of case, that one. It was a man who'd taken up a slice of land up in the northern part of New South Wales, he'd bought it. It had been a banana plantation, and sale went through, and then the next door neighbour said, "Hey, look, you're not putting it, you fenced out part of my land." So there was then litigation as to whose land it was. That came in for mediation, so I got the solicitors, the parties to it, because if the land hadn't been properly surveyed, there was a solicitor responsible for professional exit. And anyway, I managed to get a deal between the two landowners, but the wife of, I think they were Italians, the wife of one of them said she wasn't going to yield up. It involved a re-subdivision. In effect, that's all that was involved in it. She wasn't going to be party to that, but they bought this land, they were going to have it. So she dug her toes in, wouldn't agree to it. She didn't have the legal title, it was in her husband's name, so got it all signed up. And then she still said she wasn't going to have any part of it, wouldn't sign the documents, and so it went, ultimately, I don't know how far it went, may have gone to the High Court. But the whole thing, they lost out on it because the re-subdivision was an obvious thing, which was just a question of achieving the re-subdivision. And she lost out on it, and I think that with several orders for costs against, I think the last I heard they'd gone bankrupt.
Did you talk yourself sick trying to convince them of otherwise?
Well, it taught me a lesson. You must have, in a mediation, you must have the people who are going to be affected by the decision. She was sitting in front of a fire up there in northern New South Wales while her husband down here was negotiating the property. He went back home, told her what he's done, and all hell broke loose, apparently. So the lesson I learnt is you must have the people who are going to bear the brunt of any rearrangement of rights involved in the resolution. They may not agree, but they've got to be consulted. The value of consultation, if you like, that we all know you don't make decisions without consultation. And that's one thing that mediation enables one to do. You can't do it in a court case, you can't consult with the interested parties, but in mediation, unless you consult with fairly widely, you won't be able to get a consensus that will stick. I was asked once by Paul Murray from New South Wales Parliament to do an inquiry into Whalen Creek up in the northern part of the state. It's a little creek which used to flood in times of flood, but otherwise was dry. Great argument. It was essentially an argument between Collie Farms, the cotton giants from the States, and old money, the old properties. And the water is only so much water available. Cotton is very thirsty for water, and so the water was being taken from the pastures of the old estates, and they were being deprived of it. And it was a political issue, and it was just not possible to reconcile the points of view, no matter how we... I mean, it was around. Bob Ellicott actually was for the old landed estates, and of course Collie Farms had a senior counsel. I just couldn't we just couldn't find a commonality of interest.
Did you ever think of that old saying, whiskey is for drinking, water is for fighting?
No, I'd never heard that one.
It seems to be true in these sorts of situations, doesn't it?
Yes, it never occurred to me. It's an interesting one. Yes. Well, there just wasn't enough water up in New for both. Cotton's very thirsty. It goes, and you can't combine an industry like that with another industry which has got to have continuity of water for stock food. The riparian rights, as they call them, it's two unmixable sort of things we're trying to sort out and answer. And Wal Murray, who was a big man, big-hearted man, physically and emotionally, had gone up and said, "Oh, there's lots of water up there in the McIntyre River." And part of the problem was the water was coming over the boundary from Queensland. They weren't all that keen on being told you can't take water out, you've got to leave it for New South Wales, irrigate it. It was an insoluble problem.
You don't think water is rather like air? You can't divide it as such. Do you think instead it should have been viewed by the various parties as a commons with agreed rules of use, perhaps?
Well, I think that's one way we've got to approach it. But it hasn't been the legal philosophy. The legal philosophy is water rights. Water rights are bought and sold. And it seems to me that the Aborigines have got a lot to teach us there. The water doesn't belong to anybody. You can't own the rain. It's falling. You know, the rain falls on the just and the unjust. Our ideas of owning water don't fit natural requirements of land.